The moment my phone buzzed, my entire future cracked open. One careless thumb tap, one message meant for someone else, and suddenly my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I stared at the screen, frozen, as the reality sank in that I had just sent the most inappropriate, flirty text of my life to the one person who could destroy my career with a single decision. My boss. And before I could even breathe, her reply appeared, short, shocking, and final, telling me she was coming over to my place right now. In that instant, the walls of my small apartment felt like they were closing in, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected ways life tests us before blessing us, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel for more real, heart-touching stories like this one. My name is Daniel Walker, and at that point in my life, I was just an ordinary man trying to survive in a city that never seemed to slow down for anyone's pain. I lived alone in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio, working long hours at a nonprofit organization that focused on community outreach and family support. The job didn't pay much, but it gave me something money never had, purpose. Or at least it used to. Lately, everything felt heavy. My mother had passed away the year before. After a long illness, my father had retreated into silence, and the woman I thought I would marry had walked out of my life with a simple note and no explanation. Faith had always been my anchor, but even that felt strained as I wondered why God allowed so many losses to pile up at once. My boss, Elizabeth Harper, was a respected figure in our organization. She was intelligent, compassionate, and deeply committed to the mission. She was also intimidating in a quiet way, the kind of person who didn't raise her voice but still commanded every room she entered. To me, she was strictly professional, someone I admired from a distance and tried my best not to disappoint. The idea that she might think of me as anything less than competent made my stomach turn. So when I realized that the message I had sent was meant for a woman I had been casually talking to online, my blood ran cold. It wasn't explicit, but it was undeniably flirtatious, playful, and completely inappropriate for a boss-employee relationship. I remember pacing my living room, running my hands through my hair, replaying the mistake again and again in my head. I considered sending an apology, but my fingers wouldn't cooperate. Before I could decide anything, her message came through saying she was on her way. There was no anger in her words, no explanation, just certainty. That somehow made it worse. I cleaned my apartment like a man preparing for Judgment Day, straightening picture frames, wiping already clean counters, and finally collapsing onto the couch with my head in my hands. I prayed silently, asking for mercy, forgiveness, or at least the strength to face whatever was coming. When she arrived, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Elizabeth didn't look furious or amused. She looked serious, almost concerned. She took in the room, the scattered signs of a life barely holding together, and then turned her attention fully to me. Without dramatics or accusation, she explained that she had received the message and wanted to address it face to face, not as a boss scolding an employee, but as one human being confronting another at a crossroads. She spoke about boundaries, responsibility, and trust, but there was also something else in her tone, something gentle and understanding. She acknowledged how grief and loneliness can cloud judgment, how even good people can make careless mistakes when they're hurting. As the evening unfolded, what I expected to be the worst night of my life became something entirely different. Elizabeth shared parts of her own story, things she never talked about at work. She spoke of losing her husband years ago, of raising her faith through heartbreak, and of dedicating herself to service because it gave meaning to her pain. In that quiet space, stripped of titles and expectations, I felt seen for the first time in months, not excused, not flirted with, but understood. She made it clear that professionalism mattered and that trust once broken had to be rebuilt, but she also offered something rare, grace. After she left, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window as dawn approached, thinking about how close I had come to losing everything, and how strangely grateful I felt instead. The incident forced me to confront parts of myself I had been ignoring, My loneliness, my unprocessed grief, my habit of seeking comfort in the wrong places instead of leaning fully into faith and honest relationships. Over the next weeks, I worked harder than I ever had before. Not to impress Elizabeth, but to honor the opportunity I had been given to grow. I volunteered extra hours, reconnected with my church, and started therapy to finally deal with my mother's death. Elizabeth noticed the change, not through words, but through trust. Responsibilities increased. Conversations became warmer. Still professional, but grounded in mutual respect. There was no scandal, no whispered rumors. Just two people who had navigated an awkward, painful moment with maturity and grace. Slowly, my confidence returned. Not the fragile kind built on approval, but the steady kind rooted in self-awareness and faith. I began mentoring younger volunteers, sharing parts of my story without details, emphasizing the importance of integrity even when no one is watching. Months later, during a community event our organization hosted, I watched Elizabeth from across the room as she laughed with families we had helped. In that moment, I realized something powerful. The night that nearly ruined me had actually redirected me. It taught me that mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. It reminded me that God often uses our lowest moments to shape our character in ways comfort never could. I didn't feel romantic longing or regret. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for a boss who chose compassion over condemnation. Gratitude for a faith that held me when I almost let go. Gratitude for a second chance I hadn't earned but desperately needed. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. I still had days when grief crept in uninvited, when loneliness whispered lies late at night. But I had learned to sit with those feelings instead of running from them. I learned to pray honestly, to ask for help, and to forgive myself for being human. Eventually, I met someone new, slowly and carefully, building a connection rooted in respect and shared values. When I told her about my past mistakes, she didn't flinch. She smiled and said growth mattered more than perfection. Just before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. Please take a moment to comment below with one word that represents what you believe in most: grace, forgiveness, faith, or second chances. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even embarrassing, terrifying mistakes can become turning points, please like this video, share it with someone who's struggling, and let us know in the comments how it made you feel. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need hope more than they realize. Looking back, I no longer see that accidental text as a curse. I see it as a wake-up call wrapped in fear. It forced me to face my brokenness and invited me into a deeper understanding of grace, both given and received. Sometimes the moments that scare us the most are the ones that quietly save us, guiding us back to who we're meant to be.